Well done. So we'll call the meeting to order. It's 9 o'clock on the 18th of September. Wisconsin Ag Export Council, and we're ready to go. It's now Secretary Mansky.
Great. Well, since we've actually gotten together, great to see everybody almost completely in person. And a few things to report. Some of you will already know. Actually, maybe before we start, should we have a new member? Should we?
That'd be great.
Should we introduce our new member? Angela's with us from WAXC Distilling Company. Maybe if you could just tell everybody a little bit about the WAXC Distilling Company and yourself, since you are newly joining us.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I want to just thank you for the invitation to join the council. We're really excited to be a part of the conversation. We are the only geothermal powered distillery in Wisconsin. So we use the Mississippi River as a renewable energy source in our production. We are also a USDA certified organic spirits producer. So we work to source organic grain to use in our production, but we are very farmer forward. So we source all of our grains from Wisconsin farmers. We also work with them to take spent grain back to their farms and use it for organic fertilizer. So we are definitely working to create more of a sustainable product, but also bring forward Wisconsin agriculture. So that would be
great. And active in the international setting as well. So
yeah.
So that's great. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Thanks for being here. A couple of things to report on since we last met in May. We led an ag trade mission to Santiago and Osorno, Chile. We had 17 participants from 6 Wisconsin companies and organizations that were there to accompany us. And throughout the mission, participants were able to get a better understanding of the Chilean market and develop business relationships. And that included Dairy Farmers Wisconsin's Master Gallery Cheese, Mountain View Dairy, BioIonics, GenX, and WAXC Distilling Company. So, feel free to share your thoughts on that as well. The one thing that I'll mention in passing, and Chad, if you want to kind of chime in on this as well, it was a nice parting of the ways. There were a lot of business meetings, and they seemed to be pretty busy. And Chad and I, along with Mark and the USDA Foreign Ag Service team, were on primarily a government track, a lot of communication with government leaders. Timing was really pretty good because it was about at that time the EU had been trying to set up the boundaries, the fence me out boundaries of having common names being a barrier to entry. And we're pretty fortunate. The Foreign Ag Service prepared us well. The ambassador is fantastic, and she set us up for success. We got in the right meetings with the right people, and the deal was that there needed to be some sort of side letter approved by the Chilean government so that Wisconsin would not be disadvantaged by geographic indicators for meat and cheese products. And again, the timing was just right. We had all the meetings that we think we should have had. And there were a lot of things that went into it, but we're happy to report that side letter was signed and agreed to by the Chilean government. So we continue to have free and open status in Chile, which is a big deal. So timing was good. I
mean, getting in to see the actual trade, the leader of their trading, and be able to deliver the messaging was fantastic. I mean, a half hour with her on her schedule as she's running all around the country. It made a big deal. And the ambassador in Chile, I mean, Ambassador Mian is really special and very talented.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. One of our first meetings was with her, and she basically sat down and said, "All right, here's the lay of the land." She was right on. I mean, having somebody like that in country and to go at it with the get it done approach that she had was really helpful. So can't say enough about her and the Foreign Aid Services effort.
I can just jump in on that just one more second. I think that, anybody that's in this room or anybody that's listening or anybody that's trying to export, working with Randy's team on trying to figure out how to get into these markets and what markets you want to get into. Their team is really locked and loaded, and they did a great job on that mission trip. I mean, there was not a spare minute. And I think the other learnings for me is that the USDA's Foreign Ag Services, the FAS group, is gold. And anytime you're going into a country, you should try and connect with them well in advance to see what they can do to help you make connections, figure out who the right people are if you don't really know your way around. They are spectacular. And they're our new best friends.
That's good. And Angela, since you were there, I don't know if you wanted to share your experience.
Yeah, busy was an understatement. We literally were taking meetings from the second we were up until the second we went to bed, which was our goal. We were able to meet with business partners and potential distributors kind of all along our supply chain, whether it be importers or distributors of our spirits, and then also everywhere from retail outlets to on-premise accounts, large restaurant groups. And Bernadette, the secretary, she's amazing. She has welcomed us into her home a couple times. She's just really a down-to-earth person and very readily available to help us. And we have some good conversations happening in Chile. Some of the issues that we run into are mostly just tax related on spirits and just high taxes. So just working through that and figuring out where our price of entry is with distributors. So more to come.
Great, thanks. And on that keep us busy kind of thing, we actually just got back from a trade mission to Brazil. Hey, the Packers are going to play down there. We're going to go in advance and tell them what a good old fashioned Wisconsin tailgate looks like. We did not stay for the game. Just want to make sure everybody understood that. But it was, again, really good timing. And why wouldn't Wisconsin be in that market when there's all that energy about a Wisconsin team? Well, in Brazil love the Packers too. The deputy ag minister came to the tailgate and he needed to wear a cheese head for a while. So he did. And he has pictures with it and everything. It was good. Now, besides that, we were able to do a lot of meetings with trade partners and again, government officials just to try and strengthen that opportunity and have mutually beneficial trade. We are in Brazil already, but it's a market that we should pay attention to because they also produce a lot in our international market space. Masters Gallery Cheese in Croy Valley were there with us, but we also had representation from Ginseng Board of Wisconsin, Potato and Vegetable Growers, Cranberry Growers Association, Jackson's Chips, Van Holten's Pickles. I'm missing some Gale and Sartori Cheese. So we were there in force. Wisconsin Beef Council. And really good conversations. Lots of people there were saying, hey, can you bring us some cheddar cheese? We don't have any cheddar cheese. So, there are other opportunities there, and there are some Wisconsin cheeses that are able to be there, but good opportunities beyond that, I think. One thing that I wanted to mention, sorry, this is a really long welcome, but there's so much to talk about, so little time. The Wisconsin Initiative for Ag Exports, which is that $1 million a year that we get because the governor and the legislature agreed on it, has been one of the things that helps us do this kind of deep dive into a lot of places. And Mark and his team seems like everywhere anyway, but this just gives us some additional opportunity to penetrate some of those markets. We just submitted our budget this week, and we have proposed an ongoing funding for that program, $1 million a year. I just want to let you all know that because it's one of the reasons we got you all together is help us make decisions about where we should be and how we should do it. So we have proposed continuing that program for $1 million a year for the next 2 years. This is the start of it. We introduce or we submit our budget in September. The governor's budget, which gets introduced in January, February, is like the one that's ready to go for prime time. So we've got some more work to do. But this is too important to not continue this work that we're doing because we got this additional funding. So wanted to let you all know that. And then just thank you all for your time. You're all busy. And it's important that you're here to, be a resource and a sounding board, just like we're a resource and a sounding board for you all. So there, sorry, I'm ending my filibuster there unless there are questions.
That's great. Do we have anybody online from WEDC that wants to speak in, Mark, or?
Eric.
WDC.
There we go, sorry.
Good morning. No, I'm not Secretary Hughes. But good morning. I'm Aaron Zitzelberger. I'm the Senior Director of Global Trade and Investment at WEDC. So on behalf of Secretary Hughes, who unfortunately could not be here today, I just wanted to say thank you and welcome. Obviously our agriculture is known world over. Obviously, we're just in Brazil and Chile, and we have the pleasure of working very, very close with Mark and his team and have for a long time on helping to increase ag exports. It's been really nice. We've been able to utilize a lot of our existing infrastructure, our grants programs, our trade missions that complement, I think, very nicely with what DATCAP does. We've been able to fold the WIAE funds into our existing IMAG infrastructure. Our global trade and investment team, we stand at the ready. We are here with our IMAG, with our network of authorized trade representatives, our trade missions. Our IMAG window is open right now. We have WIAE funds for companies that are interested in taking on specific export related projects to help accelerate their company's exports. So if you are interested or have companies that are interested, let's talk or talk to Mark and we'll make sure we get those applications out. We have trade missions coming up, Australia in November. DATCAP will be forward with that. We have Wisconsin Dairy members of Wisconsin and as well a company going along in that as well. And we're encouraging more participation in our trade missions end of the year and into 2025. So lots going on. It's nice to see some friendly faces in here. I was talking to Chippewa Valley Bean, who I know has taken advantage of some of our resources as well. Yeah, thanks for being here. Forward to work.
Great, thanks. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for being, this is awesome and I know it's not easy for everybody to get in the car and come down here for a 9 a.m. meeting, but at least once a year, getting us all together is really, I think, really impactful. And I really appreciate it. We're going to see I think we got a pretty good agenda today. Mark's going to walk us through some of the numbers and where we're at and where we're going. And I think we all know with exports, there's ups and there's downs, and there's things that you can control, and there's things that are great tailwinds at times, and then there's also headwinds. But I think that the work that this organization is doing, as well as all of us individually, we have to continue to push and we have to be there. I mean, if you're not going to be there, it's really tough to be recognized and to have long-term growth in an export market. So I really hope the budget continues to roll forward. And if there's anything we can do to try and move that through the system, let us know, because these funds and getting out there and bringing along companies that really would have a hard time getting there without the help and the tailwinds. It's really important. As we walk through the day, if you could also just kind of, if there are topics that hit your mind and go, ooh, that's something that we should be talking about more of. At the end of the day, we're going to talk about what are the next webinar meetings, what topics should we be covering. So if you can think through the day, have those ready at the end of the meeting, that would be awesome. And with that, I think we just continue to roll.
At this point, it's the roll call
Right.
of members, and rather than just call the name out, wondering if you could just, for the benefit of our new member, is to just mention your company,
Besides the name, your company and what you do, just to help
Do you want to start on?
to do some introductions.
Just to make sure we catch that.
Good point. Let's, why don't we begin with the online folks? Because otherwise, if you're in the room, you may miss it. So I believe online, Jackie Fett.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jackie with the Ginseng Board of Wisconsin. I'm the executive director for the board.
Great, thanks.
Sorry I can't be with you today. We are hosting a Taiwan inspector, and I'm going to need to leave at about 10 o'clock to head into the office for our closing meeting because we had to audit this week on our fresh route to Taiwan program. So sorry about that.
Great. It's been a few years in the making, so great that it's coming to the final stages. Thank you, Jackie, and you have a really good microphone. And also online there's a phone number here. I don't know if that's one of the members because I can't see the name, but if you're one of the WAXC members, otherwise, as I looked, there's an iPhone on here too. So I don't know if there's anybody else from the council that might be online.
David Speck Boardman is on behalf of Senator Ballweg.
Morning. Yeah, sorry, Senator Ballweg was not able to make it this morning, but happy to listen in for her.
Very good. And I see Bo Stafford as well for Senator Smith.
Hey everyone, Bo Stafford with Senator Jeff Smith's office. I serve as Chief of Staff.
Great, thanks. I believe that's everybody online, so we can start with the chair, and we'll just, why don't we move around?
We start here.
Or Keith.
Yeah. Okay. Keith Hikes with Eurus. I'm a retired CEO. This is one of my retirement projects is to help this.
And I'm Chad Vincent. I'm the board chair here, but I'm the CEO at Dairy Farmers Wisconsin.
My name is Charles Walksmith of Chippewa Valley Bean. We're the largest processor and exporter of kidney beans in the world.
I'm Craig Bruce, CEO of Bruce Malt and Ingredients. We do food and malt products for the food and spirits industries.
Jeff Schwager, former CEO at Sartori Cheese. I chair the Trade Policy Committee for U.S. Dairy Export Council. I chair the Consortium for Common Food Names and work with CDR, Center for Dairy Research, now helping cheese companies grow, become profitable, and evaluate the export market.
Kevin Krentz, I represent Farm Bureau, largest general farm organization in Wisconsin. We have 50,000 members in Wisconsin. I've served on many different levels, all the way to serving on the American Farm Bureau board, so representing farmers.
Good morning, everyone. Brandon Bickham with the DeLong Company, export director. We're exporters of commodities, soybeans, corn, all things production agriculture. So good to be here today.
Angela Weber, co-owner of Lacrosse Distilling Company. I was putting together my bio today and I realized that I have a very different host of experiences. I used to be a former IBMer. So a lot of my experience is in digital marketing, but also now kind of coming into distilling and working more closely with farmers and agriculture has become a passion of mine. Excited to be here and hopefully offer a different host of perspectives, I guess, alongside yours.
I'm Kevin Lips with Seneca Foods Corporation. Wisconsin is a huge part of what we do in growing sweet corn, beets, all sorts of vegetables, peas, and we export them around the world. This is our harvest time, so it's a very busy. I had Japanese on Monday. I had another Japanese yesterday, and we'll have some Koreans up in Oakfield, Wisconsin tomorrow.
My name is Ryan Wooker. I'm the new director of international export for Grande Cheese. Grande is just starting their international experience and trying to work around the world. Here in the US, Grande is basically we consider ourselves the advocate for the independents. So produce some of the highest quality Italian cheeses in the world, and those go B2B, right? So we're selling to independent restaurants like Napoli here in Madison is one of our customers. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Larry Krieger with Krieger Lumber Company. I'm here representing the Lake States Lumber Association, which is a hardwood lumber association regional around the Midwest. Just think your oak, your cherry, your maple, logging, kitchen cabinets, that kind of thing.
And all right, that's everyone. We spoke with Aaron previously, so with the roll call done, we can confirm. In fact, I think we had quorum about 10 minutes before the meeting started. Right now, so appreciate everybody coming in and seeing you in person. So we're good to go with the official part of the meeting.
So if everybody's reviewed the minutes, anybody have any changes proposed from the March 6 minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of March 6th, 2024 meeting.
So moved.
Jeff Schwager.
Seconded.
Great. Charles. Anybody it's been moved and seconded, council approved the minutes. Being any discussion? Everybody all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries and the minutes are approved. You can record, we got Jeff and Charles recorded, correct?
Yes.
Great, okay, great. We did the WAXC appointments, correct? We still need more work on that.
I think just to reaffirm who it is that they got, we had some terms that ended in 2024, so renewing those folks.
Okay.
Just to read the names off.
Yeah, go ahead. We've already met our new member, Angela.
So there's one, and then the four, five, Kevin Lips, Larry Krieger, Jeff Schwager, Bob Fitzgerald. He's not able to be with us meeting, and Craig Brees. So you all, thank you very much for re-upping on the term. We'd set them up as 3-year terms, but we had to stagger it so that we weren't renewing everybody at once. So it was a one group was 1 year, one group is 2 year. There's a group that's 3 years. So, but that's caught everybody up, and we'll be able to continue to move forward.
Great. Yeah, it's now time for a public section or for public comments, if there are any, if there are anybody online or anybody in the room that has any comments that they would like to make.
I'm not seeing any chats online for that, so.
If there is anybody online who wishes to comment, this is the opportunity to do so.
And no one's reached out to us.
We should be good.
Online today.
And if there is anybody in the room that wants to make any comments or address the board or the council. Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to the 2023 full year export highlights with Mark.
Excellent. Start with slide shows. Showing, there we go. A little bit of. So we just gone through the agenda, which you also have in hand, no public appearances, so.
Maybe we can move the bar to the top.
You can minimize that, Mark.
There's a bit of a lag, so. Needs to be on both. I've got two things running here, so that's why.
There we go.
Thank you. All right, so year to date, quarter two, so these are the up to June. We're at 2.04 billion, so halfway through the year, kind of halfway to 4 billion. If things stay the same, we'll see. We're up a little over 2%. And our top 10 products, they make up 68% of the total, and among those, dairy, one of the strongest ones, up, and that's been a trend pretty much as we've been looking at this for the last couple of years. So good to see. Prepared vegetables, that category overall is up. We'll talk a bit about more of that when we get into the specific product areas. Wood products up 11%. See, and then meat preparations, so those broths, sausages, and those products also up. Just noting that the August forecast, USDA does forecast a few times a year. And it's looking, at least the current one in August is they're forecasting overall agriculture, food, forestry, ag products will be down 2.6%. So still looking a trend downward for overall. So we are at this point doing a bit better than certainly the rest of the country on the other direction, which is good to see. Some of that owes to the fact that we're doing more value add than some of the really heavy commodity items that would come out of other states. Looking at countries, and again, this is overall exports, top 10 markets, they make up 3/4 of the total. As you can see on the chart there, Canada a bit down from overall from last year at this time. So comparing, and this is the year-to-date comparisons, and you'll notice on the chart that comparing 2021, that's the base year for the WIAE, Wisconsin Initiative for Agricultural Exports funding. So we're keeping a look at that as we're going forward through the rest of this year, and we'll continue to do that as we go on during the 5 years of the program, just to see how we're trending against that. And then we also take a look at last year just to compare those two. So Canada down to last year, but still well above 21. Same for Mexico. China, just a bit above 2021, and we'll talk about that now. So China, just, I think the headwinds there, they've got a slowing economy, number one, and number two, all the trade tensions that continue. Just news from the USTR's office that the CO2 tariffs are going to continue, it looks like, for those. So that will contend. There may be some other rounds of retaliatory tariffs. As they're looking, they're going to let up on things that they really need, but other things they'll push back on, and that oftentimes hits us in the agriculture sector. So we're thinking that China will continue to be down to where they are. Japan flat again, economic malaise continues on, plus strong dollar against the yen. So we've been seeing that all along, and that's continued. Looking at Korea. Down to both overall in products, down to last year, but also down to 21. So high dollar in the Korean market. So so that's been a headwind for us there, although there are some bright spots as we'll see. And then the all others category helped to sort of lift that up because we're well ahead of last year at this time, and certainly ahead of 2021. So a number of other countries pulled forward all. So year to date, we're up a little over 2%, and the US overall is down about 1%. So we are running ahead of the US at this point in time. Looking at the product groups, so under WIAE, we took a look at all of food, forestry, and agricultural product exports. And we broke this into 3 major product group categories. Dairy is the most straightforward, really, because it's all the products that are dairy products. But that doesn't mean only cheese and curd and those, but it's also the milk protein isolates and some of those other products. And we put all the top five, noting them, but as well noting these top 10, just the number of countries that are up, and the amount that they're up in several of these areas. So generally speaking, cheese and curd, whey, albumin's, that's the milk protein isolates, and even milk and cream, which we don't export a lot of milk and cream still. Those are all up. And as we looked at that, just the more specifics in dairy. So Canada, albumin's, cheese, whey, and milk are all up. Mexico, cheeses, and curds, whey, that's up. China, whey and lactose are down, but cheese and curd are up, but it wasn't enough to pull China forward. As you can see that the blue bar is for last year, orange bar is for this year. So they're down about 4 million or so. So kind of close to flat, but still noticing it's down. But that just speaks, I think, to the strength of dairy at this point in time. Korea, cheese and albumin's are up. Japan, it's albumin's, whey. So we saw the overall for Japan and Korea that was down, but dairy running counter to that, and we're seeing them going up. So it's an interesting. And then just as we look at those, some big numbers up. They're smaller base, but in dairy, India. Mostly lactose is what we ship to India. We're not shipping cheese or those other dairy products. It's still a pretty protected market locally. Bahrain, with 8,000% up, again, small number, but it's good to put those big numbers on there.
I've told Mark he has to equal that for the next quarter.
We gotta keep that going for the rest of the year, so I mean, we are doing some promotions in the area, we are working with food, et cetera. So, yeah, the percent number is almost bigger than the total dollars that we're shipping into market, but still, it's mostly albumin, so it's those milk and protein isolates and not the cheeses and other products. Uruguay, it's mostly lactose, and Australia, cheese and curd, and albumins. And we have done for a while, trade promotion activities, trade shows, missions into that market, and I think we're seeing some of the benefit of those activities. It's not always that you can point to a trade show and then the next quarter show that there's export that takes a bit longer than that, but still, this has been over time, we've been building that up and seeing some of the benefit. Meat, when we talk about meat products as the general category, it includes not only broths and meat cuts, but also genetics, livestock, bovine semen, and as well hides and furs are all part of that. So as we look at the top 5, Canada's a bit ahead in meats, so good to see that. That's mostly prepared meats, but also live animals. And you'll see that live animals is something that's a bit of a trend across a few markets here as we look at those. Japan, again, as we talked about, and this is where it's hitting it. If it's a strong dollar, meat, largely speaking, is discretionary. So although Japan prepared meats are up, overall meat cuts are down. We don't ship a lot of live animals. We do some. It is a market for semen and live animals, but we're seeing that effect. China, I think that's where you really notice between the trade tensions and the slowing economy, meats are going to be one of those areas that's affected. Similar to Korea, that's pretty strongly down in that area. So it has affected that category the most. Finland shows up in the top 5. They hadn't actually the last couple reports we've done, but they've come back. But Finland, because of the auction, the company that does the auction, Saga Furs, that's in Finland. So practically all of Wisconsin mink goes to Finland, gets received there, and then gets sold out to the countries who are doing the processing. So they're a bit down from last year, but still they showed up in the top 5 just in terms of their volume. Good to see. I mean, that Finland is the largest market. It runs about $30 to $40 million a year, typically. As we look at some of the other markets for meat, Canada, prepared meats, live animals, as I mentioned, Japan, or talked about Korea, Taiwan, that's actually up in meat cuts. So they're running counter to some of the other markets. Taiwan's doing pretty well in that. Germany, which we don't see in a lot of other reports. They're part of the top 10 though. And that's largely due to peptones, but also bovine semen. So that it's up in that market. That's good to see. In Turkey, live animals and semen are also driving that number. Turkey, because of foot and mouth disease, they're trying to replace their herd, and we're seeing some of that in a couple of markets. And then other markets where we're seeing live animals and semen increases are due to the fact they're looking to improve their dairy herd overall for their local milk production. And they're looking more to the US than what may have traditionally in some of these markets been Europe as a supplier for those. So again, good for us, good to see.
And on Turkey, we hosted a delegation from Turkey last year during World Dairy Expo. And one of the things they expressed us at that time was, we need genetics, we need animals. We asked, how much do you need? They said, basically everything you've got. This is, I think this is a further opportunity for us to keep working with them, because that's a big year for them.
And I'll add, I mentioned that it takes some lag time between you doing a trade promotion activity and then receiving the results. I think what we'll see in live animals and semen embryos is that we've got World Dairy Expo coming up in a couple weeks. And we have 2 major delegations plus several others. So there'll be 60 or 70 people here at this office, some from Indonesia, a Central Asian group, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan. there is a large amount of demand for live animals and for semen and embryos for dairy production to meet their needs. In addition to the value add products that we'll be shipping, and oftentimes us helping a country develop their local production means that we're able to follow on with value added products that we're able to produce because they're really dedicated to mostly that it's a whole milk product, full milk product. So as we see that I could expect to see within a few months, maybe it would roll into the first quarter next year, but we would start to see some of those more immediately because they've got practically cash in hand to be buying animals. Kazakhstan, for example, $95 million is their budget over a 3 or 4 year program to improve their herd. And they're looking to the US and specifically here because we are the major shipper in the US really of bovine semen and live animals, especially for dairy. Crop products, it's our largest category just because of the sheer range of things. When we talk about crop products, it is obviously grains and the milled products and the oil seeds, soybeans, but also lumber and timber and the wood products and various products that are made from plant materials as we talk about those product categories. So in this case, bucking the trend a little bit compared to China overall, it's up a little bit as we look at this. Canada, a little bit behind, actually somewhat behind. And then Mexico after that, also down, interestingly. And given that Mexico is up in other areas, Canada, what's driving that? Ethanol is a big, it's under the beverages category, but ethanol is down significantly. But wood and prepared vegetables are actually up to Canada. We do ship hardwoods to Canada. They ship softwoods to us. We ship hardwoods back. We'd like to ship more to them than they ship to us, but they get a lot of trees. Soybeans, Mexico, that's down. Prepared vegetables are up though. Cereals, again, Mexico, I'm talking about, are down, but milling products are up, that market. So there's some puts and takes in those as, even though the overall dollars are down. And then as we look at some of the other markets, that are for crop, Australia, the prepared foods, are up, prepared vegetables and wood products are up to Australia. Australia is an important hardwood market for us. UK, wood, food preparations and sauces, it's again, one of our major export categories, generally speaking, but those are all driving the up. And in Indonesia and in previous year, we were seeing a lot more of those upticks in crop for soybeans, but we're not seeing that as much, at least year to date at this point. But Indonesia is up for soybeans. What's driving them mostly. And then as we look, and we had this conversation at our previous board meeting for the year-end results, prepared vegetables were up that category overall. But we're having a challenge due to the steel prices for canned corn, which is a major driver, obviously, for the Seneca side. But that category also has prepared fruits and then some other products. So what's driving that number, at least year to date, cranberries, cucumbers, and that would include pickles. So prepared cucumbers as well as other vegetables. So those are what are lifting up that prepared vegetable category. And then as we notice here, the milling products overall and enzymes. So those, again, those products that are made from plants. So the takeaway here is strong first 2 quarters, and we tend to keep relatively even quarter to quarter and not a lot of variation. So hopefully that stays solid for us and we'll end up with a good year. And at this point, takes us over to our discussion with the members of the council here, exporters on the 6 months, and then also some discussion on the impact from the potential Canadian rail strike on the bulk and container shipments.
Do we want to maybe just start and have everybody see if they're seeing any trends? I know I've seen a lot of you over the last few months, which is good. But if there's anything you want to share about what's going on or trends or anything major that's popping up?
I know you got stuff going on.
We always got stuff going on. So first 6 months of 2024 and looking at the rest of this year, we are preparing for huge shipments as of November, just in case, because we view the threat of tariffs as being very large. So how can we mill and pre-position everything? Our customers in Europe are already talking about getting out of contracts. That said, the first 6 months of the year, we saw our first ever shipments to China, and there was a lot of them, and it was beautiful because they prepaid. Which,
Changed. What prompted that?
I'm not exactly sure, to be honest with that. I was just in Macau last week, and for the longest time, China was our largest competitor in the edible industry. They were growing more dark reds, they were growing more black beans, they were growing more speckled beans than anybody else in the world. And then the Chinese government decided that they wanted to feed more hogs, so they focused more on corn and soy. And that really ate up those dry bean acres. And so I've never gotten a true answer, but it seemed that last year China had a very poor crop and Thailand had a crop failure. So there was just a lot of interest. And up until last year, there were only 2 people registered Edible Bean World to ship to China. And we finally got on that list, and that was a big deal. 2 years in the works to get that done. They just absorbed a lot of product, and we're gonna be short this year in the United States in a lot of edible bean classes. But gearing up, looking at our sales plan for 25, we're talking 15,000 metric tons, which in the edible bean world is a lot. I look at our friends from Seneca, and I'm worried about that because that is more than China will ever consume. So what markets will those canned beans then displace? Is that going to be fighting against Italy and the rest of the world, or is that possibly be coming in back into the United States? And so, as we look at it and talk about WEDC, I may have to go on that mission just to try and, not necessarily for a sales mission, but try and gather that data to try and figure out what's going on. Edible bean wise, we're up in the air. Not only is there tariffs, we're 25% down this year due to weather issues. Started raining in April and it never stopped. So then the risk we run coming into 25 is with commodity prices being lower and the bottom falling out of the black bean market. Mexico finally got some rain. That everybody that has an edible bean combine is going to come out of the woodwork and plant like crazy. So I'm sorry, I feel like I got a bit into the weeds there. Talking about Canadian rail strike, we're extremely worried about this. We say within our own organization, every day of a strike or a slowdown creates 7 to 10 days of delay. So we are very worried about that. The vast majority of what we do goes out of Port of Montreal. If you look at where we are in West Central Wisconsin, even though that is on a different contract, it feels every time that there's a slowdown in Canada, rail in the United States slows down and sympathy to it. And for us to go to the East Coast, everything has to go to Chicago and get transloaded across town. So for us to go to the East Coast, it's a significant increase in cost. So we've just been, we export truly around the world. So everything going into the Middle East is messed up by the Houthi rebels. Everything going into Europe is looking at being messed up by the rail strike. And then I haven't heard it discussed in this group, but the odds of an East Coast US rail strike are also rising as far as I understand. And so if Canada goes, then the US goes. And, coming into a time where everybody's worried about shipping before any possible tariffs come in, scary. Long run, regardless of what happens with the election and with shipping, 25 is gonna be a good year for our industry in the United States, but after that, it can really just because the world is so short. Argentina had a crop failure. China grew more beans, but they're not high quality canning beans, so the worldwide market is gonna be, really need more products, so we're safe for a year. Okay.
Anybody else facing the rail issues? Or any comments or thoughts about rail?
I can touch on that a little bit, Chad. I mean, we don't load a lot of containers that end up going via Canada. But I mean, but ultimately for, Wisconsin agricultural goods, there's some corn that gets originated here that sometimes ends up in like Alberta. Yes, there's an issue there, of course. On a positive note, with our Milwaukee export terminal, some of that product, especially DDGs out of maybe Iowa, southern Minnesota. If it can't go to Canada, which it does on a regular basis, maybe it can come, through the state and find another export avenue. So, these things tend to have positives and negatives, and unfortunately, we don't get to pick who those happen to. But I mean, those are kind of some of the brief things that we see. There's a tremendous amount of containers that get loaded on the CN in Chicago that all transit, via Vancouver or Prince Rupert. So those will all be affected. I think Chad brings up a good point about the East Coast rail strike, or not strike. I mean, these things are up in the air, and hopefully they'll be short-lived, but we shall see. We don't have a lot of control.
One question,
I think I said
you said Chad, Charles. One question I would have on that is, do you feel there would be, let's say the Canadian Rail goes on strike for 10 days. Do you worry about the amount of pressure that'll then put on the Chicago area? As all of our Minnesota, Wisconsin product has to get funneled down through there. That's got to create extra pressure for you guys.
From the raw commodities, which is mostly what we're shipping, I mean, you're shipping substantially higher value. We have some of that, but the bulk of our product is raw commodity, right? And there just isn't the margin structure to do anything different. We've got a couple of facilities in Ohio that can go either east or west, so we're looking at that. But in the commodity space, you kind of grind to a halt because lose a massive amount of money. It's over. And I guess, being an election year, hopefully there's some incentive to get the thing solved. But the East Coast strike scares me more than the Canadian strike. Obviously, we're affected more by it, but the leader of the ILA, he's retiring. And he really wants this negotiation to be his legacy. He's already asked the government to stay out of it. I mean, they're sitting on an offer for a 39% wage increase over the next, I think, 5 or 6 years. I can't remember exactly, 6. The West Coast strike, they agreed to 32. The West Coast Union did. I mean, they're hard and fast at 80%. That's what they want. And it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out because you've got someone, fortunately, with not a lot to lose that wants to make a name for himself in the end. And that's a little scary. But hopefully they won't bring the country to its knees, the Eastern Gulf Coast while that's happening. But I agree with your sentiment. I think it's going to happen, whether it's one day or 1 week or 1 month. I mean, they don't even want to talk. And, I mean, they're preparing their people to strike, talking points, things like that. They don't want to come to the table at all. So that's pretty scary.
I think today they said, we're not coming to the table unless you accept all of our terms. That was the announcement this morning. We're not coming back to the table unless you agree to it. That's not a good spot. So
one thing I'd say about Canada is we worked very closely with USTR, all of our national reps from the state, everybody we can in DC, all the industry signed on. And odds are there's going to be a strike, but is it 1 or 2 days? And then Ottawa's gonna put pressure on everybody to get back to work. I don't know if it's gonna play out on the East Coast, especially in an election year when everybody's fighting for the union.
And I hate to say this way, but ultimately, real power are the importers. It's the National Retailers Association. I mean, and these guys are all fighting. I mean, we're the lucky benefactor, frankly, because I mean, they pay the front haul. They have the most to lose. Obviously, that strike is the kind of the last time period to get those Christmas goods into the warehouse and the stores. So obviously we need to say our piece. We, you know, especially as groups like this, and but ultimately we're the lucky benefactor of some very powerful groups. This is going to affect negatively, probably way worse than us, frankly.
If I could just ask, so that on the East Coast, it's the longshoremen's, right? It's the port strike, not the rail, right?
Right, it's the ILS.
Spoke earlier.
Okay. I just wanted to, I couldn't remember if it were one or the other, but there's a knock on. Yeah, thanks.
We've seen some good export opportunities, continuing to grow our exports, and we're very well positioned for next year. When we talk about I guess the strike that didn't happen in Canada, on that the looming strike on the East Coast, one of the impacts for us is, while we're vertically integrated here with some of our products, most of them actually, most of our raw materials, some of the raw materials that are not produced here in the US we bring in. And so if there's a slowdown, right, and there's a backup in terms of the imports of raw materials, that of course affects our ability to produce, because we don't have the raw material. Of course, that then in turn impacts our export capability. So that's one of the challenges that we have.
Ryan, you seen anything?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm trying to explain to our company, you know, about exports and things like that. And the fact, you know, it depends on your products, right? We have very short shelf life products, you know, fresh Italian type cheeses and things like that. So, you know, if we miss something something gets rolled by a week or a day, that the whole product could be done, right? We're trying to get it to say Tokyo, and those operators are supposed to get it in a certain time frame and use it within the next 2 weeks, right? So it's just explain to people. It depends on your industry, obviously, but you know, there's how these things affect things. It might affect people differently, but a lot of it on our side is shelf life, right? If something doesn't make it within a certain time, the $200,000 container is done. You know, it's not acceptable. So those are some things in the different industries you just have to realize that, you know, and people don't understand. And also we're small, right? We're just starting exporting, right? So, you know, how can we do things? What can we pay for? How can we expedite things? Well, one container on a 15,000 container ship, you got no leverage, right? You know, those type of things. So I guess putting in contingencies as much as we can do, and that's one of our biggest things I'm always trying to tell them, is what are other things we can do? Obviously we can't really rail things, but we can fly things, right? Can we negotiate contracts? There are ways we can fill in contingencies in our business that we can still get we call them the operator, which is the end user, but that's the most important thing to us, right? Because once we get business, the last thing, if you're a high-end, high-quality product, you know, the operator, you say, I can't get it. Well, now we're hurting you and your business, right? So that's how we have to take those things into consideration. But I mean, the East Coast strike is, I think people already say, I mean, if you get the publications, it's already starting, right? People are moving stuff to the West Coast. It's starting to back up all those type of the movement going to the West Coast now. So it's going to be a major thing. And it's, you know, explaining to, you know, people within the organization or outside the organization is just, there's things that we can understand in the world. And then there's things that happen that we have no, you know, the boat hits the bridge in Baltimore. Nothing anyone can do about that, right? Type of thing. You can't even predict that. So depending on your business, how do you look at those type of things and say, if something like that happens, what else can affect the rest of your business, right? And where do you have contingencies? How can you move product around? I think that's the biggest thing that I'm trying to explain. And for some people, they're just like, you're used to working in a US market where, we'll just get another trucker, they'll just take it there. It's not a big deal, right? Well, obviously it's very different on the international market. So on the dairy side, I mean, a lot of the dairy companies obviously ship products that have a long shelf life, right? Or like a Parmesan or something like that. Not a big deal for us when we ship Parm and things like that, but a lot of the other products are different. So it's just understanding the world market. And, you know, I put together basically a white paper for our leadership, and I said, here's the international market today. and this is all we can plan on. We can look to the future, but we don't know what's gonna happen, right? We don't know if there's gonna be another war, something happens in Taiwan, right? These things are all on the cusp of happening, and if anything happens, that can affect everything in your entire supply chain. So just, contingencies and being aware of those things and understanding where you're going with your businesses, with what I'm trying to explain to my company, so.
Can I ask a random question? I look at the problem we have with insuring almost anything, whether it's our building site, whatever. Are you finding it, do you insure those high value containers? Are you having trouble insuring those containers?
We're not having issues doing that. We're just trying to determine as a company where that risk, where do we take the risk, right? We ship lactose, ship a container of lactose, $8,000. Not a huge amount of risk, right? But then I've shipped cheeses. So as a company, we're just starting. Right now we're just shipping pallets, right? We're not really shipping containers yet. But that's one thing that I brought up to the organization, like looking at all those type of things and where do you want to spend your money and where is the risk and understanding those risks. And as a company, where are you willing to take on those risks? You might say, you know what, we could technically lose 5 containers a year of cheese and we'd be okay. We wouldn't like it, right? But we would be okay. So some of those things are taken into consideration as, where do we want to take on that risk? So, and a lot of it's obviously your partners you're dealing with in the other end of in the other country, and the distributors. We go through distribution here in the US, and obviously now we're going into Mexico, and it's all about having the right partners. And in our industry is and understanding that business and making sure that cold chain, obviously cold chain is very different than the dry chain of products as well with the short shelf life. So understanding that and putting contingencies are what I'm trying to focus on. So.
What you heard from Mark with the exports in Wisconsin and semen and embryos is the leader in the US. So our exports strong demand. Majority of semen exports in the US come out of Wisconsin. By a couple different organizations that we have based here and ship all over. We're not affected by the rail because everything for us on that is shipped by air. So the cold chain is liquid nitrogen and everything has to go and that way. And so we were more affected industry wise during COVID with all the flight disruptions and everything else. That was a real disaster from a shipping standpoint then, but it's not an effect on us now.
Lumber markets, what kind of depends on where you're located. If you're in a northwest part of Wisconsin, you might rely on Chippewa Falls Yard, which would be the Canadian National Yard. That would rail strike there would have shut that down. But if you're practically anywhere else, you ship out of the Twin Cities for some options other than Canadian ones. And of course, Chicago, you have other options. I don't know, it would have been a domino effect if it had happened, but thank God it didn't. I wasn't aware of all that longshoreman wage request. Did you say 80%? I'm in the wrong business.
Sign up.
So no harm done yet. We'll see what that longshoreman strike.
But if there were a strike for longshoremen, that's where you have a stronger impact. I'm just noticing your exports in general for the hardwoods into Europe, for example.
Yeah, there was one on the West Coast. How many, 7 years ago or something like that?
I think the bad one was in 2014, if I remember. And they never actually, I was thinking about this after I spoke earlier, didn't fully strike, but there was slowdown after slowdown. And what happened, especially in the very beginning, slowed down is first flush of cargo that came after they slowed down, it got buried in the ports. And then they kind of got things opened up so things could go through, but they just never had the capacity to dig that stuff back out. So, you think about your containers.
Yeah.
I mean, we had containers in that mess that were like 75 days in LA that long. And that's one of the things, we keep moving. But the other thing that happens, they didn't actually institute it, but everybody came out with like $1,000 export surcharge.
They still charged you storage even.
They tried. They didn't. Well, we had to make some trips to Europe to.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I guess never let a crisis go to waste, huh? So it was just one of those, it was a difficult situation, but we did get through it. Hopefully this just isn't too bad.
I would say in the container business, it doesn't matter if it's West Coast or East Coast longshoremen, Port of Montreal, or Canadian Rail, anytime there's a slowdown, it creates extra pressure on every other lane. It slows down everything regardless of which direction you're.
I think it's, what it really shows you is how efficient the system is. And there's just not a lot of excess capacity laying around for when things like this happen. And I agree 100%. It just, when that has to run away from one gateway, it gets ugly fast.
Seen that during COVID, quickly. I guess from a dairy industry, dairy relies a lot on a canola protein source that we get from Canada, canola meal. During the last strike, that was significantly affected some of the wheat sources that we had. There's a soybean meal basis is much different today than it was during the last strike on rail, and there's much bigger crush capacity in Wisconsin, so that should alleviate a lot of those challenges. You talk about risk and insurance and stuff. I've heard earlier this year a couple of shipments of live heifers going to Turkey simply didn't happen because of getting insurance on those ships with the rebels in the Middle East and such.
Oh, I'm just thinking about the live animal shipments. If East Coast ports are a problem, if you think about all the destinations for those things are going through East Coast ports, it takes you a lot more if you're going to go through Gulf Coast, more time, and you would never ship out of West Coast to go that way to Europe and the Middle East and the Mediterranean.
We have anybody online that has wants to make any comments or chip in?
Jackie's still with us.
Jeff, do you have anything in the US DEF world or any of the export expertise and things you're seeing out there?
No, we're not really affected by rail. Most of our shipments are air or by boat.
It's going to Asia by and large, so.
Right, that's right.
Sorry.
Dealing mainly with longer shelf life, knowing this is potentially coming, we've pushed to ship stuff early. Been successful.
One thing I just noted, Maersk and MSC had a alliance that ends December 31st. And so Maersk and Hapag is actually going to start alliance on January 1st. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but when those things happen, there's a transition period where things don't go super smooth, right? You've got huge container companies that are ending one alliance and starting another. So may or may not affect, but these are some of the things that happen in the international freight world that can affect things. As some people probably are familiar with.
So let me just say this. Let's get Superior Container Port up and running.
Do we have an ETA on the port strike? Anybody, if it goes south?
9:30.
Yeah, October 1st.
9:30 is when their current agreement ends.
Oh. Okay. Yeah.
But there's been a lot of moves of stuff out to the west, which is causing some small delays in moving across countries.
As we look at the numbers, then if shipments are pulling forward in these first 6 months, that could have an impact on what happens on the second 6 months. So again, stronger first and maybe half, and maybe weaker second half potentially, depending on what happens in the next couple of weeks. It'll be an interesting meeting. We have an interim coming up, so that could be, I think one of the things we look at is where the year-to-date sales are at that point.
Mark, do you want to move into the trade promotion activities?
Great, and I think if we had it, so we had on the agenda here, potentially a break if folks want to do that, or if you're feeling
great,
feeling good, we can.
10:06, how about 10:15 back in?
Okay, so 10:15. Can I ask?
Take care.
Thank you, Ryan.
Using.
Can we do a quick photo? I'll put it on.
Yeah.
And then we can send it, we'll stand over by the flags. I'll put it on and then you can make sure that Paul gets a copy of it. Make fun of me.
We
Oh, for sure.
She said.
Great, I think we're ready to get started, restarted from this, so good conversations following on from our discussion. And I'll share back up again. So we're Wisconsin Initiative for Agricultural Exports results, so that FY 24 is the first trade promotion activities budget. Our trade promotion activities completed and planned. And then the WDC trade ventures. I know, Aaron, you've got to leave here by 11 o'clock. So as we get close to that, what we may do is just reverse that order and have you talk about the trade ventures when we get to that point.
Right.
And IMAG, and then we can go into the trade activities completed. So that way you're able to talk about that. Upcoming meetings and discussion for future topics. So that's what we're working on here going forward. Trade promotion activities for fiscal year 24 ended in July. We had 44 activities and 190 company participants. As a reminder, when we talk about trade promotion activities, their objective really connect prospective international buyers, and that would be distributors, dealers, agents, and representatives, end user customers, influencers, and intermediaries. So as Angela had mentioned to us, your experience in Chile, that's exactly what we do. The trade mission, a trade show, invite inbound buyers. We have pavilions at some trade shows, some individual companies may do. We may go to some trade shows, and I'll give an example, Kenya, food and beverage. Companies weren't able to travel, so Shirley Aceto went to that show. A number of companies were exhibiting on the stand, and we did lead generation for those companies. So the buyers coming to the stand and products being exhibited, we have an initial discussion, we grab cards, we grab their information, share that information back with companies that certainly in that, and then as the state, we make that available to all companies that are interested in those activities. But that's one way we're able to move that forward, especially in markets that are less familiar to a number of companies or newer markets. And Kenya would be one of those, as the USDA has put some time, effort, and resource into that market. I won't go through all these. This presentation will be available for everybody to take a look at. It'll be online to draw it down. But just to look at the range of shows in a number of different markets, certainly in Asia, Latin America. The shows in Europe oftentimes are more dedicated to the international buyers who come to those shows. It is an industry in itself, trade shows, as I know all of you who do those know, in Germany and France and other parts of Europe, where you do get a very broad international market. So we're able to see a number of customers and prospects in those shows. And again, across the two major areas, if you look at the processed food, prepared foods and ingredients, things that people eat, plus the wood products, ginseng, hides and furs. So there's that side of it. And then the agricultural products, broadly speaking. So the grains and the milling products, the inputs that would be for dairy and beef production, largely some poultry production. Those are the agricultural shows that we're involved in.
Can I jump in quickly?
Yeah, please.
We've traditionally been in Seattle and Anuga every year for as long as I've been in the business. But anybody who's in the food side, beverage side, Gulf Foods is getting hotter and hotter. And it's almost becoming more important than the big Euro shows. Because everybody from the European trade is now going to Gulf, and not everybody that's at the Gulf is going to Europe. Just a quick note on that.
Interesting point. And we've been doing Gulf Food prior to WIAE. We were using STEP grant funds that came through the VDC, for example, in order to do that show. It's an annual show, whereas the other two are every couple of years and flip off, between each other, between Germany and France, the Anugas. So the good input, and we have seen some benefit from that. Plus, folks coming from areas that have difficulty certainly traveling to the US for visa and other issues but also even into Europe, so they're more comfortable to Dubai.
A lot of Indians, a lot of Pakistanis, a lot of Saudis. It's
Folks from Africa, so they've been beneficial. So we'll continue to do those. We'll see that as we talk about some of the upcoming.
Can you put that slide back up for just a second?
Sorry.
One thing on that. So I look at this, that's a lot, right? I mean, that's a lot of places. And earlier I referenced the fact that we've got that $1 million a year that we hope will continue on in the next biennium. I mean, it's got a good start because it's in our initial proposal. But the thing I'll say is a lot of these things, DATCAP has traditionally been at them, so we're fortunate. We're a little unlike other states in that we have an international team. A lot of other states don't have people to help with international export market. So we're kind of a step ahead, and then that extra $1 million that we get a year now from state funds allows us to be more places, and maybe some places that we might not have gotten otherwise. And then likewise, it's allowing us to bring people here. So I completely forgot to mention this in my lead up, but World Dairy Expo is coming, and that's like one of the greatest shows on earth because we bring everybody here. Mark mentioned some of the delegations we're talking to, but one of those is a delegation from Indonesia that's doing a reverse trade mission here, and the WIAE funding is helping to pay for some of that. We probably wouldn't have been able to do that without having that extra funding. But what I'm seeing is with a lot of federal money available, and then state level funding. We don't have staff, but NASDA, the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, is trying to create these trips now too, and they invite a bunch of states. I've been on one. They're valuable, but the real value add, it's not like we're stepping over each other on these things. The missions have a different purpose. The NASDA mission kind of like lets you go in, create some relationships, shake a few hands. And for states that don't have the infrastructure we have, that may be their shot to get into a market. We're able to do this because we have that and this, and then that extra funding that comes our way. So as you look at this, I wanted to kind of loop back to number one, mention that World Dairy Expo is a great selling point. But number two, talk about this list is deeper than it was, before we had some additional resources coming to us, and it's helpful. Right. So
Mark, what is USLG? I see it up there.
Oh, sorry. Yes. U.S. Livestock Genetics Export Association. So that's it.
I thought that's what it was, but I was trying to figure out the one where Softwood Export Council. That threw me for a loop on that.
Thank you. That would be my dyslexia, because that's actually AHEC. I get used to typing some of those in, and there's a Softwood Export Council. So not that USLG is anywhere close to AHEC, but you get into a.
That's okay. I just.
Zone, but thank you for.
I looked at that. I knew what USLG was. I thought I did, but then we put that on there.
Well, they get this RAP funding. They're branching out. No, they are, absolutely, it's about livestock and
Yep.
wood is live at one point, but it's not livestock. So we will make that change. Thanks for
There's a lot of acronyms on there. I try to spell it as many as I can, and we've tried to have some white space on the slide, but I appreciate the question, right? So Martin Sieber was in Vietnam with me last week. They are at many of the USDA trade missions to help cultivate relationships, and they are a great partner.
Yep.
Being based here in Wisconsin, that is certainly one of the organizations we collaborate with.
I thought I knew what it was, but I was just.
No, you're good eye, good catch. Appreciate that. So just talking about the number, I mean, prior to having WIA funding, we did about 12 or so trade promotion activities per year. So there was a lot of work around that still in all. But this kind of funding allows for just an exponential increase in where we go and what we do around the world, and we want to be able to keep that up to get that full utilization of the funds. And it's not a replacement of the federal programs. We still work with food export. We still work with U.S. livestock genetics export. We still work with American Hardwood Export Council and Softwood Export Council. So where those funds exist, we want to be able to do a both and approach, which is the federal funding, and continue to utilize that, as well as state of Wisconsin funding to get as many industries as far as we can globally to grow that business, because we need a lot of countries, we need a lot of products. Looking at the expenditures year to date. So what we've done, taking a look at the spending for fiscal 22, 23, and 24. Just as a reminder, by the time all of the processes worked through and we were able to actually to begin spending money, because the legislation was for the authority to spend, and then we have to get the approval to spend, present the plans. So that started in March of 2022. So essentially in the fourth quarter of the fiscal year, since the state fiscal year ends in July. So from March of 2022 until now, all of those activities we've done, we've had expenditures of 2.8 above $2.83 million. It's as we remember, the WIAE is $1 million a year for 5 years. There's an amount dedicated to dairy grants for dairy export development, and that's around $880,000. So how that breaks down, as you see the number here, it's nearly $1.4 million in trade promotion activities, what we just talked about. And then as well, international market access grants, so working with the WEDC on that program, which Aaron will talk a bit about and where we are right now with that and what's coming up at $130,000. And then export expansion grants expenditures year to date are $400,000 or so. That's reminding ourselves that that was a grant with a 2-year horizon, with the ability to extend to a 3rd year, which a lot of folks, just given the timing of receiving those grants, have pushed their that first round in 2022 have pushed that into a 3rd year for to complete the projects. There was a 2nd round that was in 2023. So the total commitment on that is close to $1.25 million overall. And as one of the requirements of WIAE, we were to have granted, of the 5-year total, the $5 million, 15%, so $750,000. And so you can see just year to date between international market access grants and the export expansion grants, we're well above that 15% requirement for grants to companies. And that's through those export expansion grants to organizations that then goes on to benefit the companies, as well as the direct grants through WEDC.
And Mark's got a better mastery of all the details of the numbers. When I looked at this the first time that he brought it up, and the way I looked at it is, okay, 3 years in, we've spent about $3 million. If you account for that short lag time in the front end of getting the funding, we're in a pretty good spot. The other thing that I would point to is sometimes there's a lag in when expenditures hit. So, I mean, there might be expenditures that didn't get made at the end of that year that gives us a little bit of that wiggle. But I look at that and say, 3 years, about $3 million, we're kind of on course. And our percentages of 50, 25, 25, we're pretty close on that too. So, I mean, as far as like management of the funding, make sure we're getting the dollars out in a way that benefits the industry, and or, you know, especially with IMA gets the dollars in the industry's hands. I think we're kind of hitting the mark as intended.
So this is the point where, Aaron, we're at 10:30. So why don't we do this? I'm going to scroll through our points to get to your slides. And then, I used to work in restaurants, so I had this ability when someone's taking a drink or having, then asking a question. So then
It's fine.
that skill I noticed, but
Oh, no, it's good. I have a 9 and an 11-year-old, and you know, school starting recently, they become little petri dishes of disease, bringing everything home, and I feel like I've had a cold for about a month and a half.
building your immunity one kid at a time.
Right, that's what you can do. So Great, we're all good? Awesome. Well, thanks for the few minutes. I won't take too much time. Again, Aaron Zitzelberger, Senior Director of Global Trade and Investment at Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. We can just jump right into as we talked about, a number of, I guess, clubs in our bag that we're working with regard to WIAE, the International Market Access Grants, as well as our global trade missions. And then we can also talk a little bit about export tech. I don't know if Mark's going to get into that at all, but I'll mention it as well. So the International Market Access Grant, I love this grant. I think this is just an absolutely fantastic tool for companies, especially small to medium enterprises, to be able to use. I think the biggest challenge that we have is just getting the word out. So all of you will use it if you can, and I hope you will tell all of your fellow companies that you know about this, and we would love to get these dollars out the door and into companies' hands. So through the IMAG, companies can be reimbursed for specific short-term expenses associated with a targeted export project. So again, reimbursed, it is a reimbursement grant. Companies are going to apply, they're going to get assuming they get approved, which is generally the case, they're going to conduct their activity, incur the expense, and then submit those expenses for reimbursement to WEDC. Couple of good things about this. It used to be that we would do one reimbursement at the end of the project. Now, for a small, medium business, they incur $25,000, $30,000 to have to wait, if that project kind of goes on for a long time. Didn't like the fact that they were without those funds. So during COVID, we were listening to companies, what they were saying, telling us that just not having a reimbursement quicker was problematic. We put into place multiple reimbursements. So as companies go through their projects, as they incur expenses, they can do multiple reimbursements. Submit, if you finish kind of part A of your project, great, submit that to us. We'll make sure that we reimburse that portion. So that's one of the exciting things that we've done, that we can do multiple reimbursements now. Companies won't be without those funds for any extra length of time. So WIAE has been an exciting element of this as well. So we were able to take the WIAE funds and fold them into our existing IMAG infrastructure, which is really, really nice. So we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. So we have our regular IMAGs, which are always going to be there. Well, we hope they will always be there. But we also have specific WIAE funds that are targeted for dairy, crop, and meat. So you can certainly come in, and companies can go in, and we can allocate funds specifically related to WIAE and agriculture related companies, food and ag companies. So the current window is open. Come get a grant. It closes. So we've actually accelerated this for a number of reasons. It used to be that we would have our grant window close in April it would be April of next year. What we wanted to do is, one, create some urgency for companies, but two, to make sure that we're utilizing those funds, but two, give companies extra time to do their projects. You have a lot going on. So if companies go in right now, if they secure their grant by the end of October, they have until the end of the calendar year of next year. So they'll have till December 31st of 2025, sorry. Getting ahead of myself, 2025. So you'll have a year and a quarter, depending on when you get your grant finalized. So a lot of time to get those projects done, whether you're looking at doing a trade show or some other project. And we'll get into that in a second. I will mention, just with regard to October 31st, and I want companies to get applications in sooner rather than later. Because if we do run out of funds, there's nothing I can do about that. That said, if come October 31st, we still have funds available, we will likely look at doing a second round of applications. That generally runs January through March, but do it at, wait at your own risk. What I would advise is this, if you have a project that you think you're not going to get to until October of 25, that's fine. Submit the application now, go through the process now. I don't think it's too cumbersome.
It's not terrible.
It's not terrible. So we're trying to do our best to make it much more user friendly. It's all online now. It used to be a packet of PDFs and Excel spreadsheets and everything else. It's all on an online portal now. I think it's much more user friendly. If you have suggestions, always looking to make it even more so. Submit those applications now. If you're interested, let me know. We can easily send out a link to an online application and we can assist you as we go through. The grants, so up to $30,000. Now that's for companies that have gone through the Export Tech program. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Export Tech. Generally, companies will go through Export Tech are companies that are manufacturers, including ag companies that are food and bev companies that are ag manufacturers as well. Companies that go through that are then eligible for up to $30,000 in grant funds. Companies that don't go through Export Tech, we cap it at $10,000. We also cap the number of grants. So non-Export Tech companies are eligible for 3 grants, up to $10,000 each. Export Tech companies are eligible for up to 6 grants of up to $30,000 each. That $30,000, by the way, is an increase of $5,000 this year. It used to be 25. Inflation hurts everybody. And we wanted to make sure that, the services that companies were coming to us talking about, market assessments, partner searches, marketing and promotion materials, whatever. All those expenses were expensive for them as well. So we wanted to make sure they could get their projects done. So if you are interested in Export Tech, you can talk to Mark, you can talk to me, and we can certainly put you in touch with the folks that move that program, do that program. So I think it's a great program, even for seasoned exporters. We have companies that go through that are brand new to exporting. And they get a tremendous amount out of it. We have companies that go through that are more seasoned exporters, and they often come out and say, wow, I the things that I didn't know and that I should have known, and maybe could have gotten in trouble because I didn't know, really great that I went through that. So something to keep in mind.
This group's heard me talk about it before, but I had 15 years export experience and I went into Export Tech, and I didn't get any new ideas, I would say, but it allowed me to shift my thinking on many ideas. It's not just for small businesses, it's medium sized and up. I can't speak of it enough. And one thing I was just thinking about is, is it depending, you could say, wow, how am I going to spend $30,000 on a trade show? And it's pretty easy.
It's pretty easy.
But at the same time, what I used our last one for was creating marketing material for Japan and Korea, video materials, and having them truly translated was how we spent the grant. And I think it was $12,000, and it was money very well spent. We didn't need the whole thing, but it was still very helpful. So everybody you talk to should be going through this program.
I agree more.
Yeah, I mean, we received a grant to go down to the trade mission in Chile. So working through that project, which has been really, just the opportunity to be able to go down to the trade mission in and of itself through the grant funding was very impactful experience and opportunity. So we are also looking to work on marketing materials that are truly translated for the Chilean market, because when they talk about alcohol, it's a lot of slang. It's a lot of, very, loose conversations that are not, directly translated from English to Spanish. So it's helpful to work with an in-market company and marketing agencies to help us do that.
I should have just had you guys talk. This is wonderful. And you've talked about some of, what you can do. People often asking what can I do with an IMAG? And we really want to be as broad as possible. We want to say yes. We want to, so I kind of throw it into 4 different buckets. The first being trade shows and trade missions, which has traditionally been the biggest bucket. And that's great, because I think those are amazing opportunities. But so if you want to go to a trade show, you want to go on a trade mission, there's costs associated with that, whether it's shipping materials to the trade show or interpreter services or booth construction, that kind of stuff. All that is are eligible expenses. Only one that's not, well, not the only one, but big one that's not is transportation and lodging. Now, there's reasons for that. It just got to be really cumbersome, and we want to be extra good stewards of taxpayer funds. And it's just one of those things where keeping track of what flights people are booking, what hotels people are booking, and making sure that it is where it should be was problematic. And so it's not one of those eligible expenses right now.
But it is
It is.
applied to your match.
It is applied to your match, and as you can see, on your award, you have a 30% match. We want companies to be, in this as well. And so there's a 30% match that the company will be responsible for. So if it's a $10,000 grant, it's not a lot. If it's 30,000, it's more. It's 30% of the funds that you utilize. If you get a $30,000 grant and you use 20, I hope you use all of it. But if you use whatever you use, it's 30% of that. And if you go to a trade show, your transportation, your lodging is all able to be applied to your match. So, and I will say that with trade shows, especially international trade shows, trade missions, it doesn't take much to get, for transportation and lodging to get there. So that generally takes care of that. So that's the first bucket: trade shows, trade missions, marketing and promotion. We already talked about. If whether you're internationalizing your website, you need to have it translated into German, or a micro landing site, or printed trade materials, things like that. That the marketing and promotion is a big bucket as well. Consulting services. I mean, everybody talks about, you need a certain CE mark or certification, some kind of mark that you need. You need some consulting services help around that, or other areas. That's great. Some product design for export obviously is something that's important as well. We do have, it never used to be allowed. It was, oh boy, my brain's shutting down, Mark. It was, I'll come back to it in just a second. Right. And then export education, which I would say is the fourth bucket, and one that probably doesn't get used nearly enough. Export Tech is an amazing program, and I think everybody should take advantage of it. And you're going to come out, but I think there's elements, whether it's, that you can dive deeper into. So compliance or trade finance, whatever you think you might need additional help in. Language ability. It's certainly going to be helpful to help with that as well. So I always like to say that if you're working on a project and have some funds left over, maybe that's good to go back and can either, include it in your initial application. You want to amend your application to do something like that. If you have some funds left over, we can do that as well. So
I gotta ask, so I could take a Japanese course and apply it to my IMAG?
as long as you're, if you're part of your trade, trade goals, your project goals, yes.
Learning Italian.
Right.
Another, that's great.
See, what else was I saying? A couple of questions people often ask me, Aaron, what about X project? I guarantee somebody probably will have that question today. And inevitably it's going to be something that maybe doesn't fit neatly into any of these buckets, or kind of fits into multiple buckets. We'll do our best. Let me know. Let's ask the question. We're going to have that discussion. We're going to make sure that you have absolute clarity about this is something that is part of the grant. This is part of something that is applicable and covered before you sign your grant agreement, before you get your finalized documents. Make sure that everyone is comfortable with that. I never want to be in a position where a company comes back to me and says, okay, Aaron, here's all the documents for my project, and there's stuff in there that's not covered. We want to make sure that we have clarity on that. So if there's something that doesn't fit, or you're not sure is going to fit, you can talk to me. I'm probably ultimately gonna move you on to our grants manager, Sheila Postler. Used to be Katie Udek. For those of you who work at WADC, Katie's still there, but she's in a new role. So Sheila is the new contact. She's fantastic. But you can always reach out to me as well. Let's talk about that. Make sure that you're good to go there. Aaron, can I do more than one project in the same grant? Yes. So if you want to go to a trade show, want to do some marketing and promotion, you want to get some consulting work, as long as it fits into that budget that you're going to get, that's fine. It's yours to do with as you want, as long as it fits into the goals of your export project. There is the cost inputs. We do require 35% of the value of the product or service to be composed of cost inputs. We rarely ever run up any problems with that. We do have a worksheet. If you have questions or you think it might be a problem, then again, let's talk about that. We'll forward the form over to you. You can take a look and make sure that that it's not going to be an issue. Rarely again. We do have a revenue cap on the regular IMAGs. We wanted to make sure, it was just looking at some of the companies that were applying. There were a couple that were fairly large companies, and we just wanted to make sure that we were trying to do our best to target the funds to where maybe they were most effective. But with regard to ag companies, it's kind of a unique situation, and we recognize that. And so with the revenue cap, we did exempt WIAE food, ag, crop dairy meat companies that are doing the WIAE IMAGs from the revenue cap. So it's not something that you need to. So, again, our window right now is open. It will close October 31st. I'll say it in this room. I'll probably get in trouble. I anticipate that we'll probably end up running a second round.
It has been our experience.
It has been our experience that, people will wait. We'll generally get a big flood of applications last couple days of October. Last year we did use on the regular IMAG side of things, and I don't know if we did on. I think we used our full budget. We were close. So again, don't wait. I am happy to come, and my team are always happy to come talk to you at your business. If you have people you think would be good for us to connect with, we're happy to come talk about IMAGs or have phone calls or meetings. Best. So that's the IMAG. I'll get into any questions before I jump into trade missions.
I got a comment just a bit further on the.
They're telling me not to talk so fast.
So WIAE, thanks to, that was the revenue cap for companies, which doesn't apply for all of the folks that are in the room, all the things that are covered by WIAE, then don't have that on the IMAGs. The other thing is on the Export Tech program. So Export Tech came out of the National Institutes for Science and Technology, NIST, and that's through the Department of Commerce. So that all, and there was some funding and some support to help reduce that tuition cost for that program at about $10,000-11,000 a company, to bring that down so that the net cost is $5,000. So, but challenge with that was it didn't apply to agricultural producers, so non-manufacturer. If you're not processing a product, then it wouldn't apply. So, for example, bovine semen would be one of those things. Timber would be another example of those things. Lumber is a manufactured product, so that would qualify, not timber. So on those, and if it were soybeans, so a number of those products wouldn't have applied for that. You could still do the course, the program, but it just wouldn't have had that additional support to bring that total dollar down. So the Wisconsin Initiative for Agricultural Exports then provides additional funding into that program so that now the tuition cost is equal whether you are a manufacturer or an agricultural producer. And it is, as we've heard, it is a beneficial program because it's also a strategic plan development process, not just developing your plan, but a process to do that. So you iterate that process as you go on, move through your top 3 markets. Companies who've been doing it for years, as folks have mentioned, and one it's on the testimonials, Carmex, as a 60-year exporter, went into that and they kind of scoffed and they finally relented. Roxanne Bauman got them onto the program. CEO said, I'll come to one, but then I'll have my team do it because we really know what we're doing. Went to every program afterwards and said, we've never really had a strategic plan for this international growth. It just happened organically over time. So A, to develop a plan, and B, again, some of the experience here, just having gone through the things that they touch on that they had not really looked at. So even for folks who are 60-year exporters can benefit from that, aside from the fact that it's rather than $30,000 total program benefit from IMAG, it's $180,000. So it is a beneficial program, but the WIE funds do help to support.
I was talking about things happening organically. I will just the amount of times that I've heard in the last few years when I ask companies if they're exporting and they say, no, we don't export. But I do sell to Canada sometimes. Oh, do you need?
Question, the Export Tech, is that a track that just runs with your company, or is there like a start, like the Export Tech program starts like next day?
Yeah, so they'll run, generally there's a fall cohort, a spring cohort. One just started. I can get you
Okay.
dates.
UW Stout, so out on your side of the state, UW Stout usually runs one, sometimes two a year.
1 or 2 a year, but that may change. They may do something similar now where they combine. It's kind of, it's still happening, but I will, I can get you,
One's in
Yeah, here,
person,
I'll
the other is virtual, but yeah, well,
perfect. Thank you.
yeah, we've got at least one graduate I know in the group from Export Tech, so. You guys got through? Okay. Anyway, we've got several folks on the food and ag side that have gone through that program. We'll be able to talk to as besides the other folks you'll connect her with.
Yeah.
Switch to
There's other, yeah, otherwise, I'm always happy to talk IMEGs anytime. Again, we want to use the WIAE funds. In the event we run out of WIAE funds, though, companies are still always eligible for the regular IMEG at WEDC as well. So that's always a. All right. Let's talk trade missions. Just like DATCAP, WEDC does run a series of trade missions throughout the year, generally between 6 and 8. It's generally going to be our top, we'll start with a number of our top trading partners. So, Mexico, Canada, pre-COVID, China was in there, and you can see that it's there this year as well. This is our first chance to kind of get back in the China market as well. So that's our slate for this year. We've already done Farnborough. Australia's coming up, and I'm happy to report we'll be with DATCAP on that as well, which is exciting, as well as Wisconsin, or dairy farmers of Wisconsin. So we're always looking for crop, dairy, meat companies, if you're interested, just because it's not a DATCAP official mission. These are certainly open to you as well. So we got Australia coming up in November. Arab Health and UAE, we are tying a couple of our trade missions to specific trade shows. That doesn't mean that's the only thing we're doing there. So we have companies that may go to those trade shows, and that's great. We're going to focus on helping them there. But we've done this before, even at Farnborough and Paris Air Show and other places. If we have companies that want to go to those markets, and they have nothing to do with that sector, that's fine. We're still going to work with them. We're still going to pull our trade rep in. We're going to put together that schedule of customized meetings, get them that market assessment, everything that they need to do to be successful in that market. So while we're going to be probably focused on Arab Health while we're in UAE, if companies have an interest in being in that market, we should talk. Mexico in February, China in March, and then we'll be at Hannover Messe in Germany again in end of March, early April, and then capping off the year with Canada. I believe Mark and DATCAP will probably be on. You sent me a message on this. I'm trying to think of what others we have.
Absolutely. So Australia and Mexico, for sure. Canada, you're going to West Coast, you're going to Vancouver again?
Yep.
So that and any companies like you had mentioned, Aaron, so we'll partner with you, send some folks to Jennifer Liu, for example, going to Australia, Mexico. One of the team will need to figure out who that is at this point. We would have folks on, but you're welcome to go to all of them, and we would work with WEDC to help on coaching on that, to get you the meetings that you need through the other contacts that our contractor may not have. China, potentially, but I think in the case of China, depending on where you're going, what your focus is, because sometimes if it's an industry focus, for example, around water technology, then less of a connect.
In Shanghai and Shenzhen, so.
Sure.
Yeah.
But they're all open for everybody entirely, but there are a couple that we do dig a bit deeper into and send something.
Yeah. And I think, there's a few people here that have been on trade missions, and that's great. I think it probably goes without saying, the best part about being in these on these trade missions is being boots on the ground while you're there. There's nothing like being able to do product demonstrations, being able to meet folks and develop those relationships in person. We want to make sure, just like DATCAP, when you're there, that those logistical needs are taken care of, so that when you get there, you're not, trying to figure out how do I get from point A to point B. That in-country transportation is taken care of. If you're in a country where there's foreign language being spoken that you don't speak, we're making sure that the interpreter services are provided. Again, the car service that you need to get to your meetings, all that's taken care of. We want you to be focused on doing business while you're there to do business. We want to make sure that that you have that full schedule. So we connect you with our authorized trade representative. They're going to be on site with us. They're going to be meeting with you before the trade mission. As soon as you sign up, our market development director at WDC will be talking to you. Then they're going to connect you with the trade rep for that person. Trade rep is somebody that we contract with. They're not state employees, but we contract with them. They're in market. They are there full time. So you're going to be working with them. They're going to get to know your product. They're going to get to know your goals, whether it's end users, distributors, or it might be connecting with government officials, academic institutions, trade groups, whatever it is, it's going to make that trip a success for you. We want to make sure that that's what we fill that schedule with. So we're looking always for a packed schedule and make it, you're there for a short time. So it's a busy, generally week. We'll start it with generally arriving on a Sunday, and then we'll do some fun. We'll kick it off, and before the meetings, we'll also probably try to do a cultural activity if we can, because it's important for people to connect. And so, that's kind of the trade show in a nutshell, trade mission in a nutshell. I do want to mention this. I think the peer-to-peer connections that happen as a result of trade missions is so incredibly valuable. I was at Farnborough Air Show in July, and we were there with 5 companies, and there was 3 companies. There was about 12 total there, but we were there with 5, and there was 3 companies in the same booth that actually had met the previous year at the Paris Air Show. They were on our trade mission, and they got to talking and realized there were some commonalities and some intersections, and kept that discussion going after they finished at Paris Air Show, and decided as a result of this, hey, we can go to Farnborough and kind of work together and make this work. And it's an amazing thing to see 3 companies that kind of develop this relationship on one of our trade missions, and then have used that to kind of go forward and do a new strategy.
What is that? Oh, nice.
Sorry,
Peter.
we got somebody online to see if we can find.
Can you mute all?
Oh, boy.
And again, I will
Mark, fortunately, everybody got muted on the online call. If somebody could change that back, please.
There we go. See, because can people hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome.
Someone's mic was open and
all right.
during the
I
conversation.
think this slide is where I started though. So again, Francisco Carrillo handles Mexico, Spain, Portugal, Central South America, Chad Hoffman, Canada, Australia, India, Africa, Middle East, Fanfuli, our Asian markets, and Rome Rudder, UK and EU. They're going to be, kind of riding shotgun with every company that goes on these trade missions. They're going to be there with you as well as the trade rep to make sure that things go smoothly. So they'll be your main point of contact for any of the trade missions that you go on. Although I am there as well. And then Sheila, I don't have a picture of her yet. She's new. Our grants manager as well, but that's her contact information. Mark, I think you're sharing out the slides or already did. So all of our contact information is right here. Don't hesitate to reach out. Again, we're always happy to come out and sit down and talk about what might be the best fit. WIAE funds, WDC funds, what we can do to make the connections. So
I will say from our experience, we went down to Espacio Food Show first, and then we followed up with a trade mission to Chile after, and we just utilized all the connections that we made at Espacio and literally worked with like our in-market rep to set up like follow-up meetings with like so many people and they really worked hard for us. So it's awesome.
Yeah, so we can go in the next
Great, I'm gonna just close off. See if I can, when I muted everybody, it was too effective, so let me just.
I don't know much about the case itself.
We have a live mic now, right? Those who are online, we appreciate everybody being involved, but we're picking up a little bit of feedback. So could you please just ensure that your mic is muted? We're catching part of a conversation. Thanks.
Everybody is muted now.
Okay, thank you.
And that's all I have, unless there's specific questions now, and if you think of them later, again, please reach out.
One specific question, because this one is really exciting. We do it for, could we use some of these funds for a carbon?
For what?
Carbon audit,
A carbon audit.
specifically through our largest customer in the EU, who's getting pressure from Aldi and Lidl for us to be part of their 3 scope. Third scope.
To me, that would probably, when I look at it, I think about probably, you look at like the CE and UL, all the marks and things like that you're required. Is that kind of what the road that they're going down?
It would be, I think it'd fall under consulting services.
Consulting services. I'm thinking that probably a fit. It's one of the, again, that's that question where it's like, what about this?
That's what I wanted.
I've never been asked that before. And so this is one of those times where I get really excited because I'm always wanting to find new places where we might do this. So
I'll send you a note.
yeah, send me a note. It feels like it's something that you need to make happen in order to further, obviously, your export goals in that particular market. So to me,
2027, it needs to be done.
yeah. So to me, I would say it sounds like that would be something that would be a fit. I just want to make sure.
Excellent.
Charles, any idea what the scope, the timeline, the potential cost of what a carbon audit would be? Just out of curiosity, or is that still in the works?
No, it's not. So and I gotta dig down a little bit. So when you do your carbon audit, there's scope 1, which is the fuel your operation consumes, natural liquid petroleum, gas, diesel. Your scope 2 is the electricity your facility uses. So honestly, it's pretty easy to do scope 1 and scope 2. You have your Excel energy statement, you know what you're buying from the oil company. The problem is scope 3. Now, scope 3 is your up and downstream audit. So for Chippewa Valley bean, what's it cost to produce a kidney bean? What's it cost to harvest it? What's it cost to get it to me? And that also includes things like our poly tote bags that we ship in.
Yeah.
Cardboard we use in the consumer. And then downstream, we have the carbon cost to get it to market. So, like I said, scope 1 and scope 2 are pretty easy, but you got to start collecting data. That's why they've given us to 27. So
That's EU.
it's for Aldi and Lidl specifically. And so, we have to start tracking what is the average mileage from one of our growers to get to Dunn County, Wisconsin? What is, how much?
Ow.
Was that?
Good God.
It's exciting.
I think you have a really good story to tell. It's just getting that last leg of the 3-legged stool. But
Yeah, and honestly, this for me would give me the consultants to figure out, I know what I need to collect.
Okay.
I just don't know how to collect them.
So the SEC exempted agriculture from a lot of the scope 3 ruling here in the US, but there's many companies, global companies, that are looking more into this. And within the dairy industry, I've had personal experience going through some of those carbon audits, if you will. And right down to the field level, it's fairly complicated when you're talking from a lot of parts within the agricultural industries.
No, and we're years out from anybody doing this. I mean, Walmart just went to Bush Brothers and said, we want your water records. Did they do that to you guys too? Do you know?
Water records?
Yeah. Is anybody, because that's coming down from Walmart. So how much water is it taking to produce that crop? And looking at that. So we're looking down 5 to 7 years for the United States before somebody really starts to ask for it in seriousness. You know, in 2027, we will have established a carbon neutrality date. That can be in the future, because the thing about sustainability is it's small, measurable, incremental steps. But you still got to be stepping towards that target.
Exciting. Definitely.
How much time do you got? Because I can talk about it.
I'll come to Chippewa.
We could do another session on it actually, because that could be interesting for us, and I think that is an opportunity. Then, and that is a point I forgot to mention when you were talking about IMAGs, is that those registrations. So Charles, you were talking about a couple of years to get into China. So those fees, those consulting activities that it takes to get yourself registered in whatever market you're doing, that has been in the past, and it sounds like it still is.
The only thing I would mention, I just realized, generally we say 6 to 8 weeks, plan for 6 to 8 weeks to get approved from the point where you submit your application, just, and you know, we can't reimburse for funds that are expended prior to you getting approved for your grant. So just be calendaring backwards appropriately, you know, be thinking 6 to 8 weeks, not that you think, you know, I want to go to a trade show in, you know, the end of October or something, and don't leave yourself enough bandwidth to get that done. So not runway. So,
You get approved and awarded for expend.
yeah, we gotta send it over to the underwriters and the lawyers, unfortunately. But, so. All right.
No more questions. Aaron, we're
Sorry.
a bit late, so.
No, it's fine.
I think your next appointment.
Thanks for having me here.
Thank you, and good questions, good conversation, so I appreciate that always.
And the attorneys and underwriter things is a part of the question. Build it in, because the reason we have that is all of these dollars that we've been talking about will have to be meticulously identified in the report that we're supposed to give to the legislature after year 5. And you know, we are not only compelled to do it, we want to do it. So.
And I will say our underwriters and our legal that does the grant agreements, you know, they do work, I think they work pretty fast. And IMAGs again are not the most complicated of what WEDC does as far as, you know, tax credits or anything, but this is something that generally moves through pretty fast. Best thing about the fact that we're doing it with the October deadline is that it doesn't bump up against the end of the fiscal year. So we're not getting flooded with other, you know, other big transactions that are coming through. So if you do want to get an application in by that October 31st deadline, it generally moves, you know, generally probably is closer to like that 4 to 6 weeks as opposed to 6 to 8. So. We'll talk soon. I'll get you that information.
Of course, you were. Said this before, but when you talk to one of us, you're talking to all of us. So whether it's Aaron, you'll give it over to us, same with any of our team. We're talking to each other pretty regular basis, or if not talking, at least there's a lot of email back and forth.
We play in the sandbox well together.
Thanks for that, Aaron.
Bet.
Great, so we'll so back up to the number 11 on the agenda. Just to go quickly through where we've been year to date, where we started in July, which started the fiscal year for us, and then up to December where we're headed. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I can see it.
Well, Mark is doing that. I'm just gonna give an initial apology. I have a phone call that I have to step out for at 11:30. Could take 5 minutes, could take longer. So if I disappear for a while, I apologize, and I don't have a chance to come back and say farewell. Just want to say thank you to everybody for your time and energy.
Well, let's get set up. I'm gonna jump in and say one thing. That cap is amazing. WEDC is amazing, but there's also money funding through Midwest Food Export for the branded program. So quite honestly, as an exporter, there's just so many different things. So we ran an IMAG, we ran a branded program. This year, we're gonna do them both in combination. So you can really pile resources together and just punch above your weight as a company.
We're in the branded programs also, yeah, we're helpful.
It is, and both and, right? So as we talked about before, it's really stacking those benefits, looking strategically at all of those things and helping one to fit in with the other. That's really the way to work at it as you figured out and are doing. So we started off fiscal year. We join USDA missions for a couple of reasons. One is that oftentimes there are Wisconsin companies going on those, so certainly to support them. But two, so that we're able to gain some of those meetings. When you have a large group going in, then you're able to meet with government officials and industry officials and organizations that you may not be able to do if you're a smaller individual state. And oftentimes there are secretaries and deputy secretaries of agriculture from the states, as well as typically it's a deputy secretary or an undersecretary from the national USDA that's going in. So that opens doors to meetings that you wouldn't always do. Plus, you're able to meet with, develop more close relationships with the Foreign Ag Service staff. They work with all the states, no question. But if they know you and there's an opportunity coming up, then oftentimes they'll reach out to the people they've met and they know. They broadcast more broadly, but certainly having those relationships is important, as we all know in doing business generally, both in the US, but especially overseas. So the Bogota, Colombia in August. And then we were just in Brazil, first part of over the Labor Day holiday, but doing that food promotion, but also it was a secretary mission. Really, we're meeting with organizations. We're meeting with our government counterparts in the states of São Paulo and Santa Catarina, so in Brazil, and reopening the doors a little bit. We'd gone a bit fallow, frankly, in Brazil. A lot of work in other markets, but it's a difficult market, but not impossible, and it is the largest in the Americas, besides Mexico and the US. So important one to continue to work with. Kenya Food and Beverage, mentioned that earlier. That was the trade lead generation that we did. And that showed new one for us, and we'll assess whether that's the best show for folks to do. But we do recognize it's an important market, and it is for processed food products as well as it is for the agricultural inputs.
That would have been our third or fourth trip to Kenya over the last roughly year. So it's a market that I think is they've got a lot of great opportunity.
And there is one coming up, actually a trade mission to Kenya in November, which we'll see in just a moment to tie those two together. US LGE Livestock and Genetics, so that's not wood, but actually the livestock in that one. Mission to Jakarta, so that's happening now, or coming up on. So as we're working with that, again, using those federal funds through the US Livestock Genetics Export, but also the WIE funds to help to support that. Because at when you're in the neighborhood, and Jennifer Lou, one of the team, certainly when you're in, because it's a long trip, then you try to stack those opportunities between the different sources. So not only that, but the Japan Dairy Show and the product showcase that's happening there, and then as well a trip on into Indonesia to follow up. And prior to that group here, Food and Beverage Americas. So two of the team members are actually at that show right now. A Taste of the States is National Association of States Department of Agriculture, NASDA, NASDA.
It was on your list, but I just was in Vietnam on USDA trade mission last week. And Wisconsin's top exports to Vietnam, number one is ginseng, number two, soybeans, they're going into animal feeds, dairy products, wood products, as well as other ingredients. So it was a very successful mission. The team, Jennifer Lou, had set up any free time that I had in the schedule, which wasn't much, but I was meeting with other people, contacts in the market. They were very appreciative. There was just a typhoon that came through Vietnam in Hanoi. There was a very much evidence of that happening. So some of the meetings that were intended to take place didn't, because of just people were dealing with other issues there. But when you're in the market, you get to build those relationships. And this was one of the largest delegations that the USDA has had into the Vietnam market. It was over 100 participants, so lots of good meetings. We were at two locations. So while not some of the meetings in Hanoi didn't happen, some of the other meetings did, but highly encourage you to participate in those USDA trade missions. They are well executed and well organized by the Foreign Agricultural Service staff.
Thank you. And yeah, We did miss that in the list, didn't we? Food and Beverage Americas,
Who's down in Miami right now?
Shirley Acedo and Jacob Liam, the two on the team, we're doing promotion. On our stand, we're doing promotion of the industries broadly as opposed to a specific company in that case. And so again, lead generation. And I've gotten reports from them, they're flat out. There's a lot of folks, there's a lot of interest. It's a pretty lively show. We've not done as much previously in the US shows. We've done some fancy foods occasionally and some others. Going forward, one of the areas we'll be looking at for WIE is also those US shows. This would be one of them based on the experience, just because Caribbean, Central and South America, especially heavy participants, and actually someone from Morocco is at it. It's at the show on the buyer meeting.
There's a heavy international competitor that is displaying there for the first time. So I'll just reach out to Shirley and have her walk by that booth.
Yeah, absolutely. The show ends up tomorrow, I think. So, or Friday at the latest. So yeah, we'll get a message to her to have her do that. I know you reached out to her. Okay, great. Yeah, interesting. So I guess that's another thing you don't think about. We could do a little bit of competitive intel for companies just to be able to understand what their presence is and what they're doing. This is an assessment of the show in this case, but just early returns on that one is we'll look to do that going forward. National Restaurant Association show would be another one that's in Chicago, easy enough for us to do. Again, similar, between food service and then some of those distributor buyers, that looks like it's an opportunity for us as well. So we'll look at a couple of the shows and A, assess them. B, if they look strong enough, then we'll look to make a presence like we do at Gulf Food, like we do at Seal, and some of the international shows, because those international buyers are coming here, especially from the Western Hemisphere. So, yeah, good. And I didn't think about that, but as you mentioned it, but that makes a lot of sense. So when we're able to do that, yeah, absolutely can.
Seeing that the 18th, I'm actually gonna have my guy Kurt just reach out to Shirley.
Oh, sure. Okay, yeah, Kurt was with us in the UK. And then we were talking about it, but World Dairy Expo, I think this is probably our largest engagement to date in that show. As we look at, we've got, and we've done this in the past with Food Export of the Midwest, food value added food feed buyers. So feed buyers from overseas come in and then meet up with feed companies. That is a major export area for us. And so they're meeting with their prospective customers over a couple of days. Call it speed dating for business. So they're in on Wednesday, they've got a full day of just every 20-30 minutes, they're meeting another buyer, another conversation with the suppliers. That's just Wisconsin, but it's largely Wisconsin, Minnesota. That's kind of a concentration. Other states were available and interested. Typically it's majority us and then some from Minneapolis or Minnesota in that activity. Exporter workshop. So and this is exporting of livestock, embryos, genetics. That's hands-on nuts and bolts for both exporters and importers of those products. So and some companies are there to promote what their products are, kind of along the side for those opportunity conversations. But it really is that hands-on information for that side of the business, those areas. And that's International Producer Symposium. So that's in the morning on Thursday, in the afternoon on Thursday at World Dairy Expo. And then we've got two speakers, one from University of Michigan, one from University of Wisconsin-Madison, Paul Fricke from Madison, Pam Ruig from Michigan. They'll be talking about genetics, reproduction program, and how to manage that for better milk quality and production. And then Pram Ruig will be talking about animal care, nutrition, and those aspects to improve dairy production for those companies. So, and by doing that education work, then it also provides the opportunity for conversations with the suppliers to those industries. So marketing through education as opposed to direct feature function benefit discussions on sales to provide some benefit to the producers, dairy producers who are at that. That's available to all, but that's largely an international audience for that activity. Inbound buyer missions. So Indonesia, we talked about that group of about 30 people coming from Indonesia, from government officials as well as large dairies and a pretty broad range of folks, an extremely extensive schedule over the World Dairy Expo, and then also from Central Asia, I mentioned before, the Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan. There are a few others that are, Kenya is on the list, Venezuela, interestingly enough, there's a group coming in from there. So we're directly in a group of Hungary, mostly cheesemakers, but we're in touch with working either directly on the agendas or by connecting folks with over 100 international buyers just for this show. So it is a major, and then the Global Dairy Summit on Friday, and that's really available to all companies, especially in the dairy industry, to talk about trends, talk about inputs, talk about and even for equipment people, it's for all businesses really in the dairy industry to be able to understand where we see things going. It's international speakers from larger corporations and economists providing that information to usable information for folks at the dairy show, those producers. International Dairy Federation, World Dairy Summit. We did that show in Chicago. We'll follow it up with in Paris with that 15 to 18. And that's really, again, 1,500 to 2,000 producers, some educators, some government organizations on that, working with Dairy Farmers Wisconsin, helping to get cheese samples into France, in Paris.
France.
The good cheese, not that. We do. So we'll be able to sample that, because that's also part, as you see the next line item, the CL, which is, I would say, if not the largest, the second largest food show in the world. Anuga and CL are the two largest shows just in sheer volume, but they're not annual. Gulf Food in Dubai is the largest annual show, as they like to promote. But there'll be key samples as well as for that. So there's activity, and we've actually got our largest presence in that with space in the dairy hall, as well as in
Dairy halls,
yeah, which we've not been able to do for, I think, obvious reasons in France, to try to keep the door shut for us, but we've been able to get through. U.S. Dairy Export Council will also partnering with them, Dairy Farmers Wisconsin, and several companies involved in that. And I think, Charles, you're planning to be at that show, Chippewa Valley Beef.
Playing with Dad Cap, but I will say that the cheese hall is one of the most beautiful places.
It is a major point. And for us, it's not maybe so much selling into France especially for cheese. There's a bit of complexity doing that, but all the other international visitors that are coming to it. We talked about it just earlier, the WEDC mission to Australia. They're going to Sydney, Melbourne. So at least one company I know of from the food and ag space. Plus, that's also a prospecting trip for future. We're assessing that market for a future secretary mission in 26 for there, because that's been an important market, as we saw on the information on the exports as well. So to help grow that, not only for dairy products, but for others. And then finishing out the year, USDA agricultural trade mission to Casablanca, Morocco. Again, a lot of focus around production. Secretary, a lot of around production, the inputs, the genetics, livestock feed, et cetera, but also some dairy products are of interest as well in that market. Cheeses specifically, they're looking to, traditionally a lot of connection with France, just historically in that market, but they're looking more toward the US. And additionally, the facility at Port Milwaukee, the DeLong facility, makes that of interest for us to be able to help develop that market as well, because that's a bit of a hub market in the same way that Belgium and the Netherlands are for Europe, for that part of Africa, and even into Eastern Africa through Morocco, is kind of a hub port for that part of the world. So it's not just the consumption and the opportunities in Morocco, it actually carries on. So that's a market that's been of interest for us. And we've had activities there prior. This is the team. I think we talked about Jacob Liam. He's on the slide here, the newest member of the team. But these are the folks you talk to. Any one of us, again, you're speaking to all of us. Jacob coming out of genetics industry and international background, has hit the ground running with us. He's in Miami with Shirley Acedo on that trip. And as his onboarding continues and get him sort of fully up to speed, then we'll take a look at the geographies and the products to and make those assignments. And we're still recruiting for one more role to fill that team out. We did 44 activities in fiscal 24 with half the number of people we normally have. So it's a busy bunch. And I think Jennifer and Shirley especially are looking forward to having more people on board so that we're able to do their laundry once in a while and mow the grass. Didn't know if there are any questions on that, but this is Aaron's presentation. So we move, unless there are any questions. I think everybody here is subscribed to it, but we have our international newsletter. Please forward that to anybody that you know. Within that newsletter, it's we talk about, we provide information on the upcoming trade missions that we're doing, trade shows, inbounds, et cetera, that we're running, but also, as we mentioned, the USDA missions are on that. There's recap information or on the trade missions that we have done. So a lot of good information that you can pull from that publication that comes out, generally speaking, monthly. We target is to get that out about the mid-month every month as we go through. So upcoming meetings, got November 13th as our WAXC meeting. And I think one of the opportunities is to take a look at a topic besides just the reporting on what's been going on, but also to have a topic like we had our discussion on the rail, which I think was beneficial. And I think it's good that it's informative for us to have you sharing your insights into market. So Charles, you mentioned about, apologizing for getting into the weeds. Generally speaking, we're not into weeds in the Department of Agriculture, but I think in this case, those kind of weeds are the kind of weeds we want to get into to understand more deeply the markets and what is affecting your business and what things we should be doing in response to. And then March 5th, the WAXC webinar, that's the general meeting, informational meeting. We encourage everybody to attend. Again, we're looking for a topic. Same for the council meeting in March. We would look for a topic to discuss in that one as well. That would be the year end. We would have the year end data for the sales, export sales at that point. And then similar to what we've done in this, it would be talking through where we're at with the WIEE program at that point. So brings us to discussion of our future WAXC meetings and webinar topics. I do want to point out in our in the minutes from the March meeting. Reach. I don't know if someone has the from the on the page on the back side of it. It's future topics we discussed previously. USDA resources for export development, including credit finance, presentation from DOT on the intermodal facility conversations and that report that they've done. Artificial intelligence and the use in agriculture for improving competitiveness, pricing and certification of origin for products like timber, livestock, and ginseng. Or if we want to focus that conversation a bit more just on the source, those origin questions, because it's in timber and lumber. It's coming in the EU at least. I think that AHEC has talked about, and I think in some other, and I know for livestock, it's been important for a long time, continues on, but there can be other products. Kind of hard to put an RFID tag on every soybean or every kidney bean or for every piece of lumber that gets moved through. So I think some of those challenges around that. And then Kevin, you had sent to me in one of the messages about maybe just explain what your thought was.
So relationships are pretty important, and selling Wisconsin products is equally as important as selling Wisconsin itself. And so we have a lot of customers that visit us, and I was just kind of brainstorming, like, what could we do to not only sell our sweet corn, but sell Wisconsin so they have the memory. And there are resources out there. We've taken 2 groups of Japanese through a new center in Plover, Wisconsin. It's the Food and Farm Exploration Center. They love it. It's like a children's museum, but for like adults, really. I mean, it's the kids obviously are the focus, but the Japanese thoroughly love seeing everything about irrigation pivots to harvesting. They had lunch at the cafe that was funded with the food that is grown there. They happened to be there on a youth pick event where the community came out and harvested the different crops. And just to see all of that natural garden is allowing them to see what it takes to do the vegetables that we do and why there might be an insect in there or something like that. But there are other centers like that. I think there's one in Manitowoc as well. Yep, and we talked a little bit about that. I asked them a question. They don't design to compete. They just want to be resources so that people can understand what agriculture is. And I just thought that was really cool. So we did it once. They loved it. I took another Japanese through, and then they're closed on a Monday, but we have some Norwegians that are going to be in town, and they're going to open it up and allow us to tour it that day as well. So they're very flexible. Just things like that. And of course, there's the easy ones of the Packers and the different sports things that they can, see. Any resources that Wisconsin might offer regionally that we could maybe discuss as like a table, like, because we're always looking for things to do. It could be, we had a group that was domestically that went through the Dells and did the jet boats, and just something that puts a smile on their face to help sell Wisconsin products.
Jump in anecdotally, any international trip you can take trap shooting. It's gonna blow, because so many countries don't allow ownership of firearms. And nobody hits a damn thing, but oh my God, do they have fun doing it.
It's actually, it's like little ideas like that you could just brainstorm ideas and get creative.
That's it. Shore shoulders probably afterward.
Just the first time one goes off and everybody jumps.
So potentially then we could do that as a discussion session and maybe, or send to me your
what you do to host.
What you've done with other trips, like trips, and what those locations are. We can develop a resource page, that we can work from, a live page that has links. And then just share with everybody here. We can then make that available to on the website to share.
We bring in 40 groups from around the state, around the country, and around the world every year to do just this kind of stuff. And there's always something in here that's part of it. So.
Yeah, what those venues are, what you've done, who the contact is. So I think just to make that a little bit easier for all of us, if you've got, what am I gonna do with these people? And they're gonna be in this particular area. So, yeah, that's an interesting topic. We don't have to vote on it now. We can talk about what we can look to do for that informational webinar, again, just on a couple topics, because we do want to make those, as the name implies, informational. We'll talk a little bit about where we are results wise, but really the focus more is on what kinds of things you can use.
I think we've talked about it, but having IMAG and grants, understanding and how do you push the easy button on that stuff for people and in advance and getting a bigger crowd to see what those things really are and how to do it might be yet another. That one to me is always going to add value.
Would agree.
Right. So a bit more of a, I know we talk about them here, but maybe a bit more of a nuts and bolts session, with
case study.
Let's see the website,
Yeah.
walk through the application process.
Yep. Yeah. Excellent. Yep. We can absolutely do that. And we'd look at the food export, I think branded, and as well IMAG would probably I think be the two majors that they have, because they all have something applicable to everybody, all the product areas.
I don't know if it needs to be a future discussion topic, but it could, H5N1 update, the potential impact on the dairy industry growth or export side of things. It's generally found in adult cattle. We typically export young stock, so I don't know if it's necessarily an impact there yet. It's found in 13 states, I believe, right now, not here in Wisconsin, luckily at this point. And I don't know if we ship raw products. It's killed by pasteurization, but I don't know if we export any raw products from Wisconsin. So, but
Not to my knowledge.
so, but the threat of
Raw milk cheese.
We do.
But the raw milk, the raw milk cheese processed, don't you heat it up to above 140? Well, we can talk to the food safety folks to understand that, but still in all, is there still an impact even if it's not?
Yeah,
Just the fact that it exists, then are we getting blocked in markets?
exactly. And that was my question is ultimately, is it being affected or not?
But do you think there'd be any chance of getting like Doug McCallop from USDA to hear from this group what markets would be interesting to get opened?
You know, it's interesting you say that. So Ambassador McCallop was going to be in Wisconsin next week on Tuesday because the US-Chile free trade agreement, when we were in Chile, we actually spoke with the ambassador, we mentioned it earlier. The agreement had been signed, side letters to allow for the use of common names for cheeses and meats. That finally got approved through the legislature. So in state to do that. So there will be a conversation to be able to have in that context and maybe have some, sidebar conversations with him. There's some meetings being developed for next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Tuesday, mostly in the eastern part of the state, northeastern part of the state, northwest on Wednesday. But we would have the opportunity to ask about that, whether it's ideally him or at least the folks on the team that are involved with that. So that would be an interesting point, because I think there are some, understand what they're doing, but then also to provide them with some feedback on areas that we'd like for them to at least, put our level on the scale of saying we should really look at these particular items. Okay. Yep, we'll.
A few thoughts, I guess. First of all, I'm sure you have a list of Wisconsin exporters somewhere. Like in totality for ag.
You would think that, but we have several that we've worked with, but there isn't a published list of exporters.
Well, and it doesn't have to be published, but just like for this group, just a couple of things I was thinking. If we could put something together like that, and maybe, I don't know, a month before this meeting, on a weekly basis, we maybe even publish our agenda here to them. Maybe even potentially allow for something like an open session or a brainstorming session. There's a lot of intelligent people in this room, but I think the more people we can get involved, and obviously that also provides a pipeline for, leadership of this group down the road. I'm just trying to think of the future, how to get other people involved. And along with that, I think it's been brought up several times today about strategic planning. Whether it's, in your company or we do it quarterly as a company. Do we want to do something like that for this group? Just a thought for everybody to think about. And then lastly, Wisconsin is great at supporting exports, providing grant money, as we've talked about a lot today. But there has never been, and at least definitely in my life, a situation where the federal government was willing to grant more money than it is today. And what a way to leverage that with, and maybe start to try to provide those resources or ideas to the Wisconsin export community. Just if maybe we could corral them somewhere, even in a website or whatever, just really try to be an encompassing resource for exports.
Great. That's good. And there's been some work around that, but I think to have something that maybe is more direct, and you're right, all this funding that came through the ARPA dollars and all these initializations, but RAPP funds, our AAP RAP funds, agricultural promotion funds, and it's $1 billion over like a 3-year period. And the first tranche was $300 million, and we're seeing that through mostly commodity groups we had put in for that grant, but their focus was on national level as opposed to, and some groups have it. I know ginseng board, for example, just because of the uniqueness of that product and the fact that we're the majority of the export of it. So that essentially is national ginseng. But some of these commodity groups, and then what they're already doing with it, and then what they're planning to do. So I know U.S. Livestock Genetics Export, other groups are doing that. So to really open up the doors. But I think there's some opportunity to actually provide input as to next programs, because it's a lot of money and trying to figure out new programs, beneficial things. So to have that information flow go the other direction too.
You know, there's a tremendous amount of infrastructure type money too. And I know we talk about, promotion, marketing a lot here. Our products are really heavy commodity based.
Sure.
We can only dress them up so much. So we really think about logistics and infrastructure and just how to do it cheaper than the next, our next competitor, cheaper, better. I mean, obviously Larry and our companies had a lot of discussions about that too. But I just think there's so much out there right now. And if we can leverage those two together, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Great.
And I mean, US dairy export picked up 10 million.
Wow. You see the National Association State Department of Agriculture as well. They're doing some of that, like that Taste of the States thing is actually a NASDA that, I don't know if it's RAP funding doing that, but it would be similar type projects that they're doing. So yeah, that's an interesting point, Brandon. And when you
Mark, I think it'd be worthwhile to reapply, but collect how many countries we're exporting to.
Mhm.
While it may not be national in basis, we export as broad a group as anybody.
Okay. I think that's a good point. We did try to go across all industries. So we said, okay, we're not all states, but we're all industries that we were doing. We were using the export expansion grant mechanism actually to be able to do that. So
especially on the destination.
yeah. Is that $1 million is a lot of money to try to move through as we work with those. And you need programs that are developed to sort of be able to run that. Brandon, when you mentioned strategic planning, were you talking that for companies or for this?
I was talking about this
particular
What
group?
do we want this group to do?
Have a strategic planning. Okay, yeah,
I mean, that's what I was thinking about. But
sure. Yeah. No, that's interesting. Not quite export tech for this group, but I think, sort of.
I mean, at the end of the day, for us, what we see is when we have strategic planning meetings, it gives everyone that's involved, or maybe even forces them to think about something other than the day-to-day. And we get good ideas out of every single one of them. Because I mean, people have a lot of things they're thinking about, right? But it gets kind of cumbersome at times on the day-to-day side. I don't know. I think it could be interesting for this group.
And do that not as an informational webinar. I mean, we would need to public notice it because if we have more than 8 people, then it's a public meeting, but to then kind of as a standalone session that would just be specifically to strategic planning. Is that?
I mean, that would be my thought. Yeah.
Okay. It's kind of hard to do in a 30-minute segment or a 45-minute segment in a
It would be a session.
Okay.
I mean, I've been around a lot of them with even facilitators to kind of push everybody along and get everybody involved too.
Sure.
It really helps.
And then it helps, because if the folks who are running the meeting are also supposed to be providing input, then you're doing one or the other, but not both, so.
Well, you kind of have that neutral party, right?
Yeah,
Especially like my involvement with the Soybean Export Council, we did it on a regular basis. And we always used a third party. And I mean, I would say it was very fruitful.
great. Good ideas. I like good stuff. Got a good list. So we'll, and I don't want to cut off discussion. We've still got a few more minutes in the meeting, but if we any more thoughts, no worries if not, because again, send it to me, send it to Chad, send it to Keith, and we'll create that. Think of a mechanism how we maybe vote on that to surface what we do, and then that gives us also some ideas for future informational webinars as well as WAXC meetings. Perfect. Great.
Anybody else, anything else they want to cover today? All right, motion to adjourn.
So move. I'll second.
It's been moved, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries, meeting's adjourned. Well done. Thanks for all being here in person. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, keep sending those reminders.
Yeah, good. With that, I'll close out the meeting once I remember how to stop the recording. See.
Just hit end of the hair, Steve.
It'll close, thank you.
One second.
Yeah.
Appreciate the.
Okay, we'll be ending the meeting. Thank you very much for everybody attending.